Okay, we are live again, and we have one more bill to take up today, and that is S66 bicycles. We left it the other day with a few questions, and who wants to continue? Anthea, would you like to continue our discussion?
I actually wasn't with you for your last time with
Okay,
this bill,
okay.
so I don't know if there were questions for me, but I did not have anything prepared for this morning.
Where did we leave it as? We left it, let's see, we had a issue with, oh, we're gonna check with
The league
League
and
and
get some
Westman,
municipal feedback.
yeah, did you check with Westman at all? Do you have it? Did you think to ask him, Jane?
No, I
Okay.
didn't.
Okay, all right, okay.
Mazza.
All right, Senator Chittenden.
Anthea, may I ask you a question about this bill?
Sure.
So it came up yesterday what problem we're trying to solve with this, and I wanted to understand if you think this is a true understanding of it. We're just looking for clarity and consistency across the state. I see Paul Connor has joined. Paul Connor is from South Burlington, and so I brought him up yesterday in that South Burlington with rec paths and sidewalks has had difficulty, or at times it's been unclear as to what an e-bike is versus what a motorbike is. So is it your understanding that this bill is just giving clarity to every municipality across the state what a class 1, class 2, and class 3 motorbike is, so we can have consistency in our regulations, or is there more to this bill than that?
I think it's even sort of a bit broader than that. It's not necessarily giving clarity to municipalities so much as it's giving clarity to everyone that these e-bikes, which are maybe being captured under our current definition of motor, let's get the actual right word, are being considered a motor assisted bicycle. And for some of the reasons that I think you heard from the People for Bikes representative, the definition of motor assisted bicycle that we have in statute is broader than the federal definitions for electric bicycle. So I think People for Bikes is making a widespread across the country effort to try and have consistency from state to state of the usage of these different classes of bicycles. And in doing that, there then becomes the ability to clarify in our own statutes different sort of regulatory schemes based on these different bicycles. And you'll see in the language that then does get to what municipalities in the state can do, that the regulatory options for where they're allowed or not allowed at the discretion of that regulatory body differ depending on the classes. And then it's also allowing the state, if it so chooses, to treat who can operate and be a passenger on the different bicycles differently. And I believe the language has to do with, for the class 3 bicycles, those are the ones that can with pedal assist go up to 28 miles per hour. That one needs to have a speedometer, and an individual under 16 years of age shall not operate a class 3 electric bicycle, but may ride as a passenger on a class 3 electric bicycle. So I think we're defining something so that we can then treat it differently. And People for Bikes would say that it's necessary to define it and treat it differently because it's not like this other mode of transportation. And on a federal level and on a multi-state level, that is the approach that's been taken. So I don't know if it's a problem, but it's something that they strongly support having you do.
As a quick follow-up, Senator Mazza.
Yep, go ahead.
I just want to say I'm not a sponsor of this bill, so this is new to me, so that's where I'm coming from with these questions. It seems to make sense, and Liz put in the comment in the chat that the league confirmed the language works for them, so whatever that's worth hearing.
Senator, would you
I'm
like to?
sorry, what works for whom? I missed that, Tim.
The League of Vermont Cities.
Oh,
and
league.
Towns
Okay,
language works.
okay.
Did you have?
So they
your
sent
friends
us
from South Burlington
confirmation they
on?
like it. Okay, thank you.
I see Paul Connors here, and Paul, I don't know if you are interested in speaking to this. Sorry to drag you before the Senate Transportation Committee, but I know e-bikes have come up in our travels before, so I thought of you in this conversation.
Good morning, Senator Chittenden and all the senators. Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to answer any questions and provide a little bit of feedback. Just briefly, I did provide a one-page letter to Liz just about 20 minutes ago. I don't imagine you've had a chance to look at it, but briefly, from my role, both as Planning and Zoning Director in South Burlington and also having worked in Rutland County and a user of all modes of transportation, I think that this is a good bill. It provides the clarity that you were just speaking about. The preponderance of these various different types of e-bicycles will be increasing significantly in the coming years. Just for the record, excuse me, my name is Paul Conner, Paulconner, and I'm the Planning and Zoning Director for South Burlington. So I think that this is good legislation and well-timed. I did offer two small recommendations for clarity that Legislative Council may be able to address anyway, of one being sure that the legislation is clear as to what municipal and state entities can do as it relates to sidewalks, because the legislation speaks to bicycle paths and multi-use paths, just to be certain that we have the ability similarly to address whether e-bikes or perhaps the legislation already exists that allows municipalities and state entities to regulate sidewalks, but given that they're often 5 feet, 6 feet wide in concrete, that's an important consideration for us.
So a language clarification on sidewalks being inserted into the bill.
So I'm going to quickly pull up the statute, but I believe we prohibit bicycles on sidewalks and we say that these are to be regulated like bicycles. So I think that would hold, but I'm going to try and pull up the statute. I think it's 1136.
And if that's the case, then that's perfectly fine. I just wanted to be sure on that because it's a subject that comes up from time to time. And then just secondly, a very minor procedural item that it appears as though there's three manners in which circumstances under which municipal and state entities could offer restrictions on usage. And just in the form of the drafting, one of them very clearly requires a public hearing, and the other two, it's not in my reading 100% clear on that. So just a very minor technical piece, but otherwise, I think that, as I said, very good foresight to have this legislation in place.
As for that second question, I believe that is an intentional distinction between the two. The public hearing is required for one, but not for the other two.
Okay. Then that's fine with me.
Is there anything, Paul, you can tell us about Senator Chittenden we don't know about? Any secrets or anything, or no?
That depends how much time you have on your agenda today.
We'll make time. We'll carry over.
Yeah, we'll
With the chairs of permission.
yeah, we'd love to hear more about him. Yeah, Senator Chittenden.
I'm earning a reputation as Mr. South Burlington, so I just want to know. See any way for that time.
Yes, Senator Ingalls.
I don't want to rehash the wheel here, but I'm having a real hard time understanding this as well. What my concern is that we are going to create legislation based on today's technology, and then 2 years down the road, we're going to find out that some of these modes of transportation are in bike name only, but they're really just, they're motor vehicles on a frame of a bicycle. Is that what we're trying to solve? Is that what we're trying to get to? Are we trying to distinguish between e-bikes and bicycles? And I'm just worried that maybe at some point in time that these vehicles aren't going to go just 28 miles an hour. And some of them probably don't already. Some of them will probably go the speed limit. I mean, I'm a little lost about what we're trying to accomplish.
Who would like to answer? Senator, you're muted.
I think as we said before, it's really about the classifications, but Anthea, correct me if I'm wrong, that we have the 1, 2, 3, but then if it's not one of those three, then it's a motorcycle, basically. Like it's no longer an e-bike if it can go over 28 miles an hour, right?
So there would be sort of a potential intermediary there. So you would have your motor assisted bicycle, which if S66 is enacted as it is, that would be a bicycle or tricycle with fully operable pedals and equipped with an internal combustion motor, so not an electric motor, an internal combustion motor that has a power output of not more than 1,000 watts or 1.3 horsepower. I don't know what that really translates to. But then it says, in itself is capable of producing a top speed of not more than 20 miles per hour on a paved leveled surface when ridden by an operator who weighs 170 pounds. And then if it's not falling into that definition, then it would go to the definition of a motor driven cycle, which is basically like a motor scooter. So I think if you don't capture it in this like lower tier of mechanical contribution, the e-bike, it could be a motor driven motor assisted bicycle. And if it's not a motor assisted bicycle, it's going to be the motor driven cycle, sort of going up in our tiers of mechanics.
So at some point in time, and maybe we're there now, and I do apologize for my ignorance about this. I really do. But at some point in time, we're going to have these modes of transportation that aren't going to be allowed on the bike path because they are too capable. They're able to go too fast already, or what have you. I mean, they're not even modes of they're in bikes resemblance only. They really are made to be on the open road and not a bike path or a designated bike lane. Am I making this way too complicated for what it is? I'm just concerned that we're going to do legislation that all of a sudden these transportation modes are going to be able to perform more like motor vehicles than they are bicycles. And are we putting provisions in to make sure that those restrictions, that doesn't happen, that we don't have vehicles that aren't really bicycles? They look like bicycles, but their capabilities are a lot greater than what a pedal assisted mode of transportation would be. I don't know if I'm saying that in the right way. I know what I want to say. It's just not coming out in the right way. I guess I just don't want motor vehicle. I don't want modes of transportation looking like bicycles, thinking they're bicycles, but their capabilities are so great that they're a hazard to somebody walking on a bike path or something like that. And that they probably shouldn't be on that. They should just be on the roadways. Instead of being, because they look like a bike, they're on these paths where there's slower traffic and a potential for harm to public could happen.
Yes, Paul.
Senator Ingalls, I think that you're raising excellent questions. I guess what I would say would be, one, the classifications as proposed are intended to be consistent with what is being done across the country with other states, and in certain instances to match federal law, which then aligns with what the manufacturing is being done. So in that sense, I think this legislation is following and matching exactly what's being done across the country. To your specific concern, I think that that's what this legislation proposes to do. And so an electric bicycle would be able to be used on a roadway or on a bicycle lane, just as any bicycle could. However, on a bicycle path, a recreation path, a shared use path, the kinds of things that you're just referring to, it authorizes the responsible entity, whether it's the state or municipal entities, to regulate them on a case-by-case basis, understanding that the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail may be a different circumstance than the South Burlington or Burlington Rec Path. And it affords exactly that flexibility to address those concerns that you've raised.
Yeah, I guess I just don't want something that can go 50 miles an hour on a bike path, on a pedestrian walking path, or something like that. And I don't want to have to get into where we got to put a speed limit sign on that. I'd like it just to make sure that whatever we're trying to accomplish here is just plain simple knowledge that, hey, your vessel or it's just like we don't allow motorcycles on there. I don't want a bike that has the capability of a low output motorcycle to get on these and to be able to blow these paths up with high rates of speed and be a concern for anybody that's on that path for recreational use.
So
Yes.
I don't know whether Senator Chittenden or me. Senator Ingalls, when I was considered that, I agree. This is, to me, this is why, this is the genesis behind this, would be to set these standards of what is a bicycle. So as all these new things or more power or more speed come on, they can't squeeze themselves in and define themselves as a bicycle because they won't be able to meet what we've put in statute. So I think, unless I understand it incorrectly, this legislation, by defining what goes in that bicycle door, helps protect against those new developments, as you're talking about, where we don't want to put the pedestrians at risk. And so I think it's really important that we get confirmation. This is what we're defining as a bicycle or an e-bike. If you're faster than this, if you don't meet these specifications, then you don't come in this door and you can be regulated out. Is that a correct, because I think this is the critical issue. It seems to me this is why taking action now is so important before we get this greater proliferation and greater ideas, because we do know speed, technology is out there, and you're envisioning what potentially can happen. So it seemed to me this is sort of anticipating that eventuality and just saying, we just like a motorcycle, you're out. But
Right.
maybe it's good to have Anthea confirm that, because that's to me the value of the legislation.
And maybe it gets down to, Senator Kitchell, a lot like when we were talking about the noise levels on the bill, that the miscellaneous bill that they didn't want to have the meter anymore. They put the sticker on there, and maybe they already had the sticker that says this is what defines this vehicle.
Mhm.
And maybe that's what we're looking for. Maybe we're looking for some definition from the manufacturer to really what the capabilities of this vessel, or I don't want to say vessel, but this mode of transportation is. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Senator Chittenden, you had a question?
Well, I'd love to hear Anthea's response to Senator Kitchell. I would just add, I agree. I think that's what this is doing, that Senator Kitchell was asking about, Anthea. And I feel like the other part of this is why, Paul, you came up in mind, is I think of South Burlington. We love our bike paths, and we want to connect with Burlington and Winooski, and we want consistency across our communities with what's permissible, so that they can create documentation and trail maps, and that we can support the whole region and really communicate to people where they can use these Class 1 bikes versus where they can't use the Class 3 bikes. But with that, I'd love to hear Anthea's reaction to Senator Kitchell's question.
So I think that everything that Senator Kitchell said is accurate. I think you're both defining them so they're not treated like a bicycle if you choose that in the future, and defining them so they're not treated like something that's more like a motorcycle in the future. And then Senator Ingalls, to your question that you brought up with labeling, that is actually something that's addressed in this bill. It's at the very, very end in Section 7, and it goes into effect on January 1 of 2022, but I believe you heard testimony from People for Bikes. This is already happening, and you would be able to see these stickers on any e-bike in Vermont. But manufacturers and distributors of electric bicycles shall apply a label that is permanently affixed in a prominent location to each electric bicycle. The label shall contain the classification number, the top assisted speed, the motor wattage of the electric bicycle, and because they wanted this language, and shall be printed in Arial font in at least 9-point type. And then it goes on to say that a person shall not tamper with or modify an electric bicycle so as to change the motor, powered, speed capability, or engagement of an electric bicycle unless the label indicating the classification required in subsection G of the section is replaced after modification. So similar to the approach with snowmobiles and that certification for noise, this is something that it sounds like is happening in the industry that maybe addresses some of your concerns of, well, it looks like a bicycle, but how do I know if it actually is a bicycle, or if it's a bicycle that's going to zip off at 45 miles per hour?
Correct. Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
What about Paul's earlier comment? We had the hearing, but the other question about sidewalks, have you looked that up to see if in fact we regulate sidewalks already in statute?
So I am in the process of trying to determine that. What we do specifically say for motor assisted bicycles is that a person shall, and this is in 1136 D1, a person shall not operate a motor assisted bicycle on a sidewalk in Vermont. If you wanted to, you certainly could include comparative or similar language here, which would sort of be extra clear. And it would be saying now we do not in any way want these to be on bicycles. I don't know from a municipal perspective if there would ever be an instance. And I apologize that I don't know sort of universally about the sidewalk piece. If there would be a reason where maybe a municipality would want to have some more discretion there, since you could operate these in a non-motor mode. But if the goal of the committee right now is to say, we don't want these on the sidewalk at all, I think you could do something similar to what was done in 1136 D1. And I will try and get a better answer on the law for the sidewalks piece.
Do we really want to do that? I don't, does that have implications that we haven't thought through?
It might have implications for kids.
That's what I'm thinking.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah, and I don't want to overreach. I mean, you could get into areas of, I don't know, you get into an area, I'm thinking Senator Kitchell in some of our areas where we're not going to see a bike path, but the municipality is willing to let their kids ride on the sidewalks to keep them safe, because it is, there's really not a path for them to go that could be safe. So I don't want to start legislating for communities when they know better what serves their communities better than what from looking from afar, I guess.
Yes, Paul?
My recommendation on this item would be rather than necessarily a blanket prohibition across the state, rather to add it to the authorities that are granted in this bill of addressing them at the local level, exactly for the reason that Senator Ingalls just said, that I look around our central Chittenden County communities, and it's a mix of sidewalks and recreation paths. And for especially if it's going to be say a 12-year-old to be required to be on the road for a portion of their trip, and then until they get to the rec path, I think allowing the municipalities to each look at their circumstances would probably be the best fit here.
Yeah.
Local control, that's the best.
Well, that was my concern about a blanket something in statute, because it doesn't allow for the discretion or the flexibility to make decisions around unique qualities or whatever that we can't even begin to anticipate. So is that hard to do, is to on that municipal? Did you have the authority to do that now, Paul?
That was the question that I had raised, that it's I know some municipalities do prohibit bicycles on some sidewalks or all sidewalks, but I've not seen, and I'll be honest, I've not done a deep dive into the subject, but I haven't seen strong clarity on the matter, which is why on my review and after confirming with our police chief and public works director that the three of us all recommended this be something specified in the legislation here.
Yes, Senator Pertzler.
Well, I understand there might not be the authority to regulate or not regulate it. You would have the authority to enforce it or not enforce it. So in that way, I think a municipality could, it might be technically illegal to ride the bike, but that doesn't mean any police officer has to arrest every 12-year-old that's riding their bike on the sidewalk. So I get the point. I think it's a good one, but I think that's probably how it's dealt with now. It's whether you enforce it or not.
I just hate to see something going on in the community and you've got somebody that's always complaining. You got a group of kids, they got a little group together, just like I used to when I was in Montpelier. And we'd ride around and ride around and ride around and ride around. And I'd hate to just see somebody start complaining and completely complaining, when in fact they are complaining with what's right in the law. But after just repeated complaints, that it forces action.
Yes, Senator Birchlick.
Well, maybe one way, if it's the intent of the committee to pass the bill out today, we could pass it out, and then this is something we could address in the T-bill or the miscellaneous T-bill when it comes back, or we could take it up as a separate issue about municipal authority to regulate sidewalks in general, instead of just about.
Couldn't it somehow be included in today's bill with some minor adjustments, or you want to separate it, or how?
I just
Is
thought
it
it'd be easier.
is it a major change to the bill? We could get that done.
Could we
sometime.
add it to the municipal authority bill? I mean, section?
So that would be saying that
Around,
maybe it's as simple as saying an electric bicycle may be ridden in places where bicycles are allowed, including highways, bicycle lanes, sidewalks, and bicycle or multi-use paths. That would be on line in the section for 17 and 18 on page 5. But since I'm not finding something in statute that's directly addressing bicycle use on sidewalks, aside from that motor assisted bicycle, I'm concerned that putting something in here without sort of having a better understanding of what's being done in other municipalities might be creating an unintended different approach, and sort of saying, here, these are allowed to be used on sidewalks, and that's on a state level, when really it's more just you want to give municipalities the ability to deal with it municipality to municipality, which it seems like maybe they're already doing with respect to general police authority, and since there's no prohibition on them being on sidewalks. So I feel a little bit like I'd like to do more research on this, and that if we just stick something in somewhere. And I pulled up Paul's letter, and I was hoping he had a great suggestion that he had included in his letter, and maybe he had picked out an exact line to insert a word, but I didn't see something there. So I would like to spend some more time on it, so we're not unintentionally treating bicycles differently and having more of a piecemeal approach than we intend to from municipality to municipality.
but in fact, that's going to happen now because municipalities have the authority to set their own rules. So in fact, and now we're defining what constitutes an e-bicycle. Isn't that almost subsumed in that municipal authority
And
that we're giving them, whether it's e-bikes or whatever? So I'm thinking maybe that by that language in and of itself and the definition, municipalities in fact do have that discretion without adding anything specific more on sidewalks.
I think you hit the nail on the head, and by including something specifically for e-bikes, we might be superseding what municipalities are doing. But by saying an electric bicycle may be ridden in places where bicycles are allowed, and saying unless specified in here, e-bikes are treated like bicycles, and that's in 1136A right in the beginning, except as provided in the subsection, electric bicycles shall be governed as bicycles under Vermont law. And operators of electric bicycles shall be subject to all of the rights and duties applicable to bicyclists under Vermont law. We're saying in the beginning, we want to treat them like bicycles.
Mhm.
So I think if we want to like jump into the regulatory framework that exists for bicycles, almost staying silent is better.
I'm think that's my conclusion. Since what we're defining that these are bicycles, and by virtue of that definition, then they're coming under the existing statutory language and the authority for and with the municipalities having the authority to regulate as the bill provides. So after all this, I would say that it's better to be silent. Don't attempt to do anything more than what we already have in place regulating bicycles.
Senator Chittenden?
For clarity, the bill is silent, so effectively it is how we want it to be. Okay.
Right. I think sound and fury signifying nothing. In other words, we're right back to.
Yes, Paul.
Thank you. I guess I would say that if Legislative Council is comfortable that municipalities have discretion on bicycles, period, on sidewalks, then that's certainly sufficient. The reason for my flagging the question was that the within this bill, the authority to regulate on in these circumstances is a restrictive one. So it only allows a municipality within the areas where electric bicycles are permitted to regulate them on multi-use paths and bicycle paths. So it's that was the reason for my note, was that it is a limited authority within where electric bicycles are allowed. However, again, if the committee and Legislative Council are comfortable that we have broader authority on bicycles, then that covers the issue, and I have no concerns.
I would like to do more research before sort of like definitively being on the record saying municipalities can regulate bicycles on sidewalks. I know that it's happening. I haven't done sufficient research on it. So that's my understanding, on the spot.
We can always move the bill out and give you time. And if we need an amendment, we can do it before third reading.
Okay, you want to do that? Do I hear that?
You want me to make the motion to move the bill?
Like you? Sure.
Yeah, I won't put in, the fact that we might want to add an amendment, but I'll move the bill favorably.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, Senator Kitchell has moved S66 favorably. We have a second.
Senator Chittenden seconded it.
Okay, Senator Chittenden seconded. Any further discussion at this time? If not, the secretary will call the roll.
And I will do the chair last. So I will start with Senator Ingalls,
Yes.
Senator Kitchell,
Yes.
Senator Perchlik. You're muted, but I think you said aye.
My space bar wasn't working. I'll say aye.
Clerk votes aye, and then Senator Mazza.
Yes, yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, unanimous vote. And who would like to report it? Senator Chittenden?
I think I'm due up, so I'll take this.
Okay. All right, you can do that one, and you can pass it in. And like I said, if we need an amendment, anybody else have any comments or anything this time? Well, thank you very much. We did our both bills this morning, and I think you've got a little time before we're on the floor. Any other questions or comments before we shut down? Thank you very much. Yes, go ahead, Jane.
No, this is a follow-up to Senator Ingalls. It's not, it can be dealt with after we adjourn. It has nothing to do with transportation.
Liz, do you want to take us off the off live, please?